5 years ago, we had a brilliant idea. It was an idea that was going to transform this congregation, and then we just knew it would go on to revolutionize all of Unitarian Universalism too. It came out of discussions that I had with Dan Moore, who was president that year, and David Walsh, who was finance chair, and we had the enthusiastic support and encouragement of UUA consultant Frankie Price Stern as well. No congregation was doing what we were going to try, and we were excited that our fellowship would be on the front line of trying something truly groundbreaking. So what was our idea? Well, let me give it to you one piece at a time. First, there's the fact that however a congregation thinks of itself, whatever any socially oriented organization claims as its primary goal, what it comes down to is the transformation of human lives. Management consultant Peter Drucker, for instance, wrote that the core mission of all social sector organizations, however that mission might be articulated, is in fact a changed human being. Second, there's the case made by UU minister and congregational consultant Dan Hotchkiss that the true owner of a congregation is not its board or its minister or its members, but its mission, which, given the point I just made, is a mission to change lives. That is the true owner of a congregation. In other words, the board, and for that matter every committee, exists to serve that mission in some way. The board determines policy in support of that mission. The finance committee crafts and funds a budget for achieving that mission. The social justice committee engages in wider witness to that mission, and so on. Third, all of this work, from membership development to pastoral care to professional ministry, can be greatly enhanced by embracing a concept of stewardship, which extends the sense of ownership in and responsibility for serving the mission. And so our idea was to create an intentional program of stewardship that would work with the board and committees to nurture individual and institutional commitment to the congregation's mission. Such a program would help the congregation grow and become a greater force for transforming lives within and beyond our walls. In practical terms, the stewardship program we envisioned would build connections of trust and caring between members. It would help us tend to our own spiritual growth. It would find and practice deep generosity. It would transform lives and make the world a better place. And it would share what we have found with other congregations so that they would benefit too. Key to all of this were members who agreed within this program to be stewards. Each steward would build an ongoing relationship with the individual members assigned to them. They would nurture the commitment of those individuals to our congregational mission, and the stewards would work with those individuals in support of regular pledge drives and special capital campaigns. As I say, the whole thing put together is a brilliant idea. But if you detected a certain amount of hubris or presumptive pride in my setup for this, well, you're right. Within a couple of years of actually trying to do this, it became clear that there were some problems. First, how many stewards did we actually need? If we expected each steward to build ongoing relationships with some number of other members, well, we had to keep that number small so that it didn't demand an unreasonable amount of time from any individual steward. So let's say 3 members assigned to each steward. Well, that means at the least that a quarter of the congregation needs to be stewards. That's a large chunk of the membership to be devoted to a single program. Furthermore, shouldn't the stewards themselves have a steward of their own? Then that means we'd need more like a third of the members to be stewards. Aside from the problem of numbers, there was also the problem of the word stewardship itself having been corrupted. We wanted to use it in a broad sense, meaning looking after all aspects of the congregation. In that broad sense, offering music in a service and teaching religious exploration are forms of stewardship. Providing food and coffee and welcoming newcomers are forms of stewardship. Keeping our facilities clean and maintaining our grounds are forms of stewardship. Just about anything that helps build and grow and enliven this congregation is stewardship, because it's looking after something that we don't own, but which has been entrusted to us. The problem was that in the wider UU world, the word stewardship had already become little more than a euphemism for the canvas, for the pledge drive. And it proved much too hard to explain that being a steward was about much more than being a canvasser. Many people, and this is understandable given how the word stewardship had already been corrupted, heard that another member was their steward and wanted to meet up with them, and then declined that meeting because they assumed that it would be about money. It became evident that we'd have to achieve the same goals of helping our members stay connected to one another, to the congregation and to the congregation's mission in other ways. For one thing, we realized that asking each steward to meet 4 times a year with each of the 3 members assigned to them was not only asking a lot of everyone, but in most cases it probably wasn't really necessary either. We're not such a small congregation that everybody knows what's going on in everybody's lives, where the news that people need to know is shared in such an organic way that it might as well be telepathy. Smaller than 40 or 50, people just know what's going on. But at our size, we have to be intentional about how we stay in touch with people. But neither are we such a large congregation that most people won't feel at least somewhat connected, even if all they do is show up on a Sunday morning. Our social area out there, you may have noticed, isn't particularly big. It's hard to avoid other people out there. The primary challenge then for keeping people connected is reaching those people who don't attend very often, or who had been attending and then stop. Then, in February, I had one of those light bulb moments. I was at the UU Ministers Association conference known as the Institute, and there I was in a 3-day workshop offered by Michael Piazza, who is minister to a progressive and inclusive church in Atlanta that is growing by leaps and bounds. At one point in his workshop, he asked us, maybe 100 UU ministers in that room, what single thing makes the most difference in the life of a congregation? It's not good programs or great music or fabulous potlucks, though those certainly do make a difference. Rather, he told us, what makes the most difference is having a good database. You need to know who's visiting you so that you can thank them for visiting. You need to know who's come a few times on Sunday morning so that you can invite them to other events. You need to know who's there pretty regularly so you can ask them if they've considered becoming a member. But most importantly, you need to know who you haven't seen recently, who hasn't attended in the last few weeks, so that you can reach out to them and say, "We've missed seeing you recently. How are you? Is everything okay?" The fact is that congregations, like any other community, lose more people because they simply drift away and nobody even notices. Think about it. If you were part of some group and then stopped going for a while, but nobody from that group ever checked in with you to see if you were okay, would you really be inclined to go back to a group of people who apparently didn't miss you? So we've been trying to figure out how to do this since March, starting during our time when we were holding services at Sandy Bottom. We started in the simplest way possible, with an attendance sheet, then contacting people that we realized we hadn't seen in a few weeks. It's not been a particularly elegant system. It's been a lot of work for the greeter or usher or whoever else from a hospitality team who tries to figure out who is who. And it hasn't always gone that smoothly. So I do want to thank everyone who's been part of this experiment during the last few months, because the good news is that it does work. figuring out who we haven't seen and then letting them know we've missed them really does work. Now, do we need to do it exactly as we've been doing it for it to work? Probably not. There are definitely other, more elegant, less intrusive ways that we could identify who is here so that we can figure out who isn't. But do we need to have some way of identifying who's here so that we can figure out who isn't? Yes, because we're too big for that to happen organically. And most importantly, is this about giving brownie points to the people who are here and demerits to the people who aren't? No, not at all. This is about community, about the simple offer of human connection, and there shouldn't be anything shameful or guilt-inducing about that. As one common strain of UU theology might be articulated in the words of the Big Bang Theory's Amy Farrah Fowler, I don't object to the concept of a deity, but I'm baffled by the notion of one that takes attendance. As I said at the start of my homily 2 weeks ago, people come to church because they're looking for something. They might be looking for a place where it's not only safe, but also encouraged to ask questions. They might be looking for a place with people who share similar values and worldviews. They might be looking for a place where they can share their gifts and talents to make the world a better place. Whatever it might be, it's about being part of a community. Often, such a community is described in terms of family, in the sense that people look out for one another in their family and help one another when needs be. And a family like that doesn't forget its people just because they haven't been seen in a while. So part of the promise we make to one another to be a community is to notice when someone's missing, and then to reach out to them. Simply getting in touch with someone and letting them know we've missed them can make a world of difference. We might find out that their work schedule has changed, which prevents them from being here on a Sunday, but they'd like to participate in other ways. We might find out that they've had health problems, but all it would take is a ride from another member to help them get here again. We might find out that they weren't sure where their life's journey was taking them, but knowing that we thought of them reminded them that they'd already found a friendly place with us. Taking attendance, however we do it, isn't about the people who are here. We're great at greeting and making welcome the people who walk through our door. This is about the people who are not here. The methods by which we take attendance will evolve as we figure them out, but by whatever means we identify who is here so that we can figure out who is not here, we'll do our best to live up to our promise to be a community, to extend that simple offer of human connection.
Good morning. My name is Rosalie Pfister, and I am a social butterfly. I love to talk. Sometimes my talk is when I'm on stage telling stories or chatting with a stranger, or when I gather people together around a lovely dinner. All of this brings me great joy. I didn't always realize this in myself, but in time and with the help of keen observers in my life, I have found ways to take my love for interacting with others and make it my ministry as a member of this fellowship. Wait a minute. You might be asking yourself, did she just say her ministry? But she isn't an ordained minister like Reverend Millard. What is one's ministry, and what does it mean to have shared ministry, you might ask? Well, I too had these questions until I stumbled upon this concept in a book. As a group, our membership committee was reading the book Welcome by Andrew David. He explained that the act of greeting is a vital ministry and not just a social pastime or a task that we do and then leave. The definition of ministry can also be spiritual work or service. He went on to say, the few moments you spend with visitors may be turning points in their lives. Therefore, be focused, intentional, organized, and deliberate in your ministry. Once greeters experience the joy and satisfaction of seeing newcomers return, they're hooked. It occurred to me how much this rang true for me. Ever since we started the hospitality teams, I had chosen to be a greeter. The first time I did it, I knew it was the perfect fit for me. Meeting each person, welcoming them in with a big smile and a hug made my day. I felt helpful and useful, along with receiving so much positive energy back. Welcoming each person who walked in our doors was great fun. Connecting with each of you, I found myself getting to know each of you at a deeper level, and I was filled with gratitude. No longer did I feel like the new kid on the block. Then there was the important work of being there to greet those first-time visitors and newcomers. Helping them feel comfortable and informed so that their visit was a positive one became my goal. I remember a time when I acted as a greeter before I was officially a greeter. Second service had begun, and I was at the welcome podium outside next to the front door changing the chalkboard message when a mother with 2 young boys walked in. She confided in me that she was trying us out for the first time, and she looked at it as if it had been a difficult task to get there that morning. I'm sure a lot of you parents can relate. I showed her the nursery, and we dropped off her youngest child, and then all 3 of us went into the sanctuary, and we sat together. Her older son went out with Miss Joanne, and I continued to help her along, finding the hymnal. And at the end of service, we talked more, and I was able to find out her interests. And then with that, I was able to direct her and help her to some of the activities that we have at the UFP that I thought she would like. It also helped that we actually have both shared that our sons had the same name, Asher, which is not a common name typically. Well, from then on, I was her person. We had connected in a special way. Another time when greeting in my more official now greeting format, I welcomed a fairly new family by saying hello, and I used their names. The dad was shocked that I remembered his name. I had just met him last Sunday. But at the same time, because I had my name tag on, he could refer to me by my name without having to ask me mine. This leads me to another form of ministry that as membership chair, I didn't probably mention that before, but I am now membership chair, I feel quite passionate about. Wearing our name tags, whether we are longtime members or newcomers, is essential in learning each other's names. This simple act strengthens our relationships with each other and our community as a whole. An article by Tom Rainer on the importance of wearing name tags at church states, "Knowing names makes fellowship more personal. As long as conversations remain at that anonymous level of like brother and sister or hey, hi, fellowship will remain surface level." One of the hesitations I have heard about becoming a greeter is that they aren't good with names, or I'm not an extrovert. Well, I can tell you right now, I can think of 2 very long-time greeters that might even be why you're here to this day. One of them who will openly say they are not good with names, but they always remember a face. The other person will tell you, I am a total introvert, but I love talking and getting to know people. Probably the most important thing is to feel prepared. Which is why our hospitality training is going to be happening this coming Saturday. And I hope that you all will think about coming to this, and that's what this little form in our order of service is about. Because really, I think the most important thing is that when we feel prepared for something, we're more comfortable and willing to do it. So even though we might have our own special reservations about wearing our name tags, it is my hope that we do this simple act, which in itself is a form of ministry. I believe this will build deeper connections. Don't we all want to be a part of a place where everybody knows our name? Plus, it's just easier to have a conversation with someone when you know their name. Well, let me backtrack to back in 2012. I had been here a year, and I had formed a new friendship with Judy Remsburg through our love for scrapbooking. She asked me, would I like to be on the membership committee? She explained that there was a variety of things to do on the committee, from keeping track of our total membership and orienting new members, name tags, and to greeting folks and planning social events. So I enthusiastically said yes. I was especially excited to greet people, but I found myself getting involved in many other things first. One of my first ideas that I was encouraged to implement was the starting of soup socials. The idea was similar to what had been done at the UU church our family had attended in Lafayette, Indiana. After working out the logistics, the event began with a good turnout. It was an opportunity to feed ourselves here at the fellowship, while also providing a time to get to know each other better, a time for fellowship. I was pleased to see so many stay for soup, but I must say, it felt like a lot of work. I was kind of doing a lot of that, okay, to make it happen. Then as the event got more anticipated and known, the help of many hands making light work came into play. Many of you offered to make soup, and others set up tables or stayed to clean up. I found myself not exhausted at the end, but rather invigorated and in awe as I took it all in, watching all of the conversations happening in small groups, all ages interacting, and the roar of voices and laughter filled the room. This was my firsthand experience with shared ministry without knowing it. I can see now that the meaning of shared ministry is truly synonymous with doing things in community, which is what our Unitarian Universalist principles are built upon. The word ministry may be a new concept when directed away from what we know as our ministers' work. Many times we have heard members give testimonials that the UUFP has helped them grow as musicians, as teachers, as leaders. Through all of this, there is the distinction between just doing a task and ministry. The difference lies in your passion. When you are doing something that best suits your talents and strengths, you are happy to serve and you receive as much as you give. So I ask you, what is your ministry here at the UUFP? Is it being able to get here early and start that coffee? Thanks, Steve. Is it planning an event? Is it sharing your great cooking abilities? Maybe it's teaching an RE class or a Sunday forum. Or is it remembering to put your name tag on and sharing your beautiful smile with others? Whatever forms of ministry we choose to do, we all are sharing our ministry of connecting in small and big ways by doing what we love together in this community we call the UUFP. Not sure where to begin? Let's talk. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Henry Chambers. I am part of the hospitality team, primarily as a greeter, no surprise. I am also the connections lead. I'm on the leadership development team. I'm also on the membership committee, and I represent the UUFP in our cluster meetings. To start off, I just want everyone to take a moment to imagine what I like to call a perfect connected visit to the UUFP. You walk through the door. Maybe it's held for you by one of our younger helpers. You're greeted. You're made to feel welcome because you are. You find and put on your name tag so everyone can know you by your name. Our fellowship's heartbeat beats a little stronger. It beats a little faster because you're here. Now, through the connections of people, friends, through the sermon, songs, your life light burns a little brighter. That light leaves with you, goes out into the world. And maybe, just maybe, if you're inspired by the words of Alexander Papadras, as I am, which I first heard here, you can reflect that light into the dark places in this world and the black places in the hearts of men and change some things and some people. Now, I hope you have that kind of experience here on a weekly basis. I usually do. I'm certain that in the beginning, when we were a smaller congregation, that was much easier. Everyone knew everybody. The low numbers of members made keeping connected, being aware of the changes in each other's lives, and dealing with the wants and needs of the fellowship a much simpler task. Now, not so much. For a long time, our fellowship has been working on something all UU churches are dealing with. Actually, all churches in general, staying connected with each other. This is such a pervasive problem that at the Tidewater Cluster meeting held in April, where 7 UU churches in this region get together to work on being better churches and to share their ideas, I led a workshop on membership/stewardship. Every seat in that room was filled. We're all passionate about looking for ways to deal with the lack of connection and in wanting to strengthen and grow their own congregations. And we all have a part in this. Some of those parts that help are these few. Having a building, that's a big positive. Having a good reverend, that's also a plus. Doors make a difference. But walking through doors, you walking through these doors, that's what matters most. One of my greatest joys is a part of that. I've heard mention that I have a reputation for being a good greeter. Now, if this is true, it's because I am genuinely glad to see each and every one of you when you show up. And I have no problems expressing that. It is an honor and a privilege to be one of the first connections that you make when you come home to us. That being said, one of the things I'm absolutely horrible about is remembering people's names. I can hug 50 of you, but know 5 of your names. That's just me. So when those other needs of the fellowship arise, like sending a thank you for coming by card to a new visitor, or getting temporary name badges for the returning ones, my hugging skills, they're pretty worthless. Which is why we have things called lists. They help me and they help us with these kind of things. I'm sure that most of you have heard of another list, the dreaded attendance list. It's composed of numerous people trying to get your names, check them off a sheet of paper. I know it hasn't worked out perfectly. Nothing ever does. And we'll keep finding better ways of figuring out these things. A few months back, while we were gathered at Sandy Bottom Nature Park, I gave a short explanation on why we were attempting this. I shared with you exactly what I shared with the people at the cluster workshop, that growing a church, strengthening our fellowship, and diversifying the connectivities between us starts with knowing who's coming through those doors. I told you that it wasn't about you here in front of me. I said it was about who wasn't here. That empty seat in front of you, to your left, to your right. It was about, what's their name? You know, the one you haven't seen for a while. Those who might be in need of our strength, the kindness, and the love of our fellowship. But for some reason, they just weren't here. I'm happy to report, such as Andrew said, that we have used that information. We have reached out to our members, our friends, and because of that, some of them have returned. And our fellowship is stronger because of it. But I was a little wrong way back then at Sandy Bottom. This is also about all of you. We are strongest when we are together. Our fellowship bonds tighten the more we join together when each of us is free to look for a responsible search for truth and meaning. Our love spreads as we lead by example, practicing the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Our connections work because you are here and that we know it. This has always been about you. So stand up, be seen, let your name be counted, put on the list. Let your voice be added to our collective song. As you grow, we grow. As we change, you change. As we strengthen our bonds, you too are strengthened. I hope and I pray that you continue to come and participate in this grand celebration of spirit, and that our connections brighten your life light today and every day.